Hey there. So today we are going to be doing section 1.4, subtracting integers on page 14 to 17. However, I did want to explain what you had to write in your notebook, the four properties that you had to write in your notebook. So I am going to be checking your homework, so make sure you keep up with it because, you know, that is going to be part of your grade. Anyways. The first one is the commutative property of addition, and you should have written out everything it said. All that says is, if we have 3 apples and we have 5 apples, we take 3, we take 5, we can add them together and we're going to get 8. If we had 5 apples and 3 apples, no matter which way we put the 5 and the 3, it doesn't matter. We can do 3 plus 5 or 5 plus 3. It doesn't matter which way we write it. In addition, the commutative property of addition says this doesn't matter, we're still going to get 8. Okay, so that's commutative property. Associative property of addition is when you associate different numbers. In addition, it doesn't matter if we group together 9 and 4 or 2 and 9. 2 plus 9 is 11 plus 4 is 15. 2 plus 9 is 11 plus 4 is 15. And actually, I just did that wrong because in PEMDAS, we do parentheses first. I should have done that first. 9 plus 4 is 13, plus 2 is 15. It doesn't matter with the associative property of addition. It doesn't matter as long as you're adding all across. It doesn't matter which numbers you add first. The additive identity property just means that if you add 0 to any number or any variable, because these letters are called variables, it always is going to be the initial number that it was, or the initial letter that it was. So 3 plus 0 is 3. So that's the additive identity property, okay? And then the last one, the additive inverse property. An inverse is the opposite. So anytime you add a number and its opposite, you always will get 0. So inverse, take the opposite, and you're going to get 0. So hopefully those will be explained. You will have questions on that as you go through. Which property are these? So you do have to know those. Okay, don't get too caught up in those. I don't want you to feel confused if you don't know it. We can always go over it in person too. So subtracting integers, we're doing this on page 14 to 17. Now we just did the adding integers, and you know in Algebra 1 we're going to go a lot quicker than we did last year. So what this says is when you subtract integers, it's actually, the subtraction actually means to add the opposite. Okay, so A minus B actually means add the opposite of whatever that was. So if you add the opposite of B, you're going to add a negative B for integers A and B. Okay, so let's look at this. You know from first grade or second grade, 8 minus 6 equals 2. Well, if you looked at it in this way, 8 plus adding the opposite, so that negative tells us to add the opposite of 6. So the opposite of 6 is negative 6. And what we learned from the lesson that you already did was that when you have two numbers with two different signs, you're going to subtract the numbers and take the sign of the bigger number. Okay? This can be confusing, but let's take a look at each example. We have positive 4 minus a negative 2. The minus tells us to add the opposite. What's the opposite of negative 2? The opposite of negative 2 is positive 2. So we're going to add the opposite. 4 plus positive 2 equals 6. So 4 minus and minus 2 is 6. Sorry. Over here, negative 3 minus 2. The negative, this minus is going to tell us to add the opposite. What's the opposite of 2? Negative 2. So negative 3, add the opposite. Negative 3 plus a negative 2. You have two numbers. They're both the same sign. Keep the sign and add the numbers. We learned that in yesterday's. So you get a negative 5. Okay, negative 15 minus 7. A minus tells us to add the opposite of 7. The opposite of 7, adding the opposite of 7 is negative 7. Negative 15 plus negative 7. Two numbers, same signs, add the number, keep the sign, negative 22. Last example, you're getting a minus. What's the opposite of negative 8? Okay, the opposite of negative 8 is positive 8. 3 minus 8 equals 3 plus the opposite of negative 8, which is positive 8. So you actually add the numbers, you get 11. So what you're going to do today is numbers 1 through 31 on page 16 to 17. And have a good time and ask me questions if you need to. Thanks.